Yes, so we are live. Hey guys, welcome to the third episode of the Code Rush, a dedicated show for developers with live demos and practical examples on DevOps and cloud native concepts. I am your host Pawan, and I have with me OP as another guest, another host to manage the show. Hey OP, I called you as a guest. Sorry for that. And how are you doing today?
That's fine. Thanks, Pawan. I'm doing great and excited as always for the show. And welcome everyone to the third show for the Code Rush. Let's have a great interaction with a great speaker about an interesting topic.
Yeah, so who is our guest and what are we going to talk about today?
So today we are going to discuss about a strong topic, future of developer experience. And as the topic sounds strong, we need someone strong to talk about it. So our guest for today's show is Hemant Kandelwal, a seasoned leader who has a proven track record in building scalable and user-friendly products with a strong business focus and customer obsession in making hard things easy. He has a hands-on approach in building version 1.0 products at multiple startups. He started Harness India R&D Center at 5 years ago, and that has grown to 250 people strong team. So prior to heading Harness R&D, he was CTO at Revigo. Now he's building two new exciting products in stealth mode as a startup within startup and leads the developer experience team at Harness and built 20% improvement in developer productivity internally at Harness teams. He has initiated some unique ways of collecting information and metrics to assess developer experience. And we are going to see that in today's show. So, hi, Hemant. Welcome to the show.
Hey, hi OP, hi Pawan. Thanks for a warm welcome and introduction, and a very warm welcome to all of our viewers and audience who have joined the Code Rush show today. And I'm very excited about my experience with developer experience, and what we have achieved, and would love to share with all of you. So thank you, Pawan and OP.
Yeah, Hemant, that's a very good intro about Hemant. So, welcome to the show. We are very excited to have you here. And yeah, so in order to build software efficiently and effectively, developers need to be able to easily understand and use the tools and platforms they work with. That's very important. And that's where developer experience comes in. So, today in this show, we have software leader as a guest to talk a lot about developer experience, why it matters, and some strategies to create an effective developer experience. So, Hemant, my first question to you is, what are the biggest challenges developers face today, and how can companies address them? And how do you define developer experience actually?
No, I think that's a great question, and this is an area that in past couple of years or maybe 3 4 years has become a very very important topic, and fundamentally, today teams and organizations have become very demanding from their developers, right? And gone are the days that you can just write code in your favorite editor, commit the code, and be done with that, right? I think the responsibilities of developers itself has increased manyfold, right? Now, just think about it. Today, every company is a software company. Either a company is building software on their own, or they are building software for their customers or giving the software to someone else, right? So, if you're not a software company today, you're probably a dead company. Now, the other important data point is there are close to 30 million software developers today, right? And even if we approximate, 100,000 US dollars per annum that companies spend, right? It's a $3 trillion money that is being spent on just the development community, right? That's a
Right.
lot of money, right? And interestingly, in 2019, Stripe with Advanced Data Corp did a survey where they asked multiple CEOs, what is their perception of the developer productivity, and they said there is a 31.6% efficiency loss. You can do the math: $3 trillion into 31.6% efficiency loss. That's a lot of money. We are talking about $1 trillion that CEOs
Yeah.
are feeling, right? So it's a big problem, and this needs to be solved. And just closer home, as in Harness, Jyoti, who's our serial entrepreneur, a very very successful one with multiple unicorns under his belt. On LinkedIn, I think 6 months back, he posted a general survey, to all developers, how many hours in a day they are able to actually
Hmm.
code.
Hmm.
75% said they could only code up to 4 hours.
Okay.
Another 3 to 4 hours is just going away, right? So this problem is becoming large. This problem is something, uh, it's a big challenge, right? And you know companies want to solve it, developers want to solve it, right? Because they don't want to be under radar all the time, right? Like, for example, if they're waiting on an approval, or if they're using a product or a tool that forces them to solve their problems in 3 hours instead of 30 minutes, right? It's a productivity loss, right? Not
Right.
any fault of developers, right? So I think this is whole, this is all culminating into the need for better developer experience that improves productivity, effectiveness, and ultimately provide competitive advantage to the team and organizations, right? So this is how I would like to look at this problem, the challenge, and this space, Pavan.
Wow.
Okay.
After hearing the stats, I think developer experience indeed is a challenge. So, like, what are the essential ingredients of a great developer experience, and how do you prioritize them?
Yeah, right. Once you understand the enormity of the problem, right? Of course, the immediate next step would be to think about, right, what is going into developer experience, right? And what are the problems, how can you solve it, which one you should attack, etc., etc., right? And I think it all starts with great experience. You know for example, a tool, a technology, or a platform that someone can become familiar with, very, very quickly, and kind of start using it in a quick way, right? And you know if you really think about it, right, developer experience is broken today, right? And the pain starts on day one with, for example, a new developer joins your team, right? Where it takes too much time, too many tickets to even get started, right? And as I said, right, like, you want your best people you have come on board to start doing stuff quickly, right? And it doesn't get even easier for more experienced engineers, right? Because in today's cloud-based, decentralized microservices environment, it's really, really challenging to track everything, all the dependencies, and what's going on, right? So I think to your question, OP, right? There are many things that goes on to define great developer experience. And for example, in my opinion, right, what is the primary job of a developer, right? Like, for example, if the primary job of a developer or a person in your team is to, let's say, write code and produce new features, etc., right? Anything else that they are doing is probably a toil, or is
Yeah.
probably something that needs to be reduced, right? So first of all, you need to identify which of those additional things are taking away the maximum amount of toil, right? And then that's how you prioritize, right? And as we go along, I'll probably share some more interesting insights into how we did that, right? And we actually calculated minute by minute summary of where we can extract the time into
Yeah.
this right? And just to close on this point, the way I see, how do we improve in two areas. One is, what is the efficiency that you can extract out of the systems and the tools and the platform that you use, right? So it's a non-person dependent thing. I'll tell you, right, based on my experience, there is so much low hanging fruit over there, right? Just
Hmm.
from the systems and processes. I mean, that itself can unleash, 20-30% productivity even today, in my opinion, in many environments. So, yeah, that's how I will look at it, OP.
Got it.
Okay. Yeah, so I really liked your answer for the first question. Like you said, every company is a software company today. Like many people might just know Big Basket. Many people might know they might think it's just an online grocery store, but backend it all runs with a lot of software. There are developers and DevOps people running it. So
Yeah.
that's really interesting. Coming to the next about, documentation plays a very important role, as we all know. So what are some best practices for creating documentation? And other resources supporting a great developer experience from your
Uh,
view?
that's an interesting one. And during COVID time, right? I think we were about 60 people in our India R&D team, and in the next, I think 1.5 years, we added probably 100 more people, right? And it was all remote, right? So when somebody, and I think today hybrid work is very very common, right? Even though companies are moving towards having couple of days in office, right? But there is still, always going to be an element of hybrid, right? Now look at those 100 people who joined during COVID time frame. They couldn't come to office, they couldn't talk to all the senior people who have been around. And typically in a fast paced environment, in a startup like Harness, after 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, right, people do assume that this person should start contributing, right?
Great.
Now look at from the perspective of the people who are joining today. How are they going to learn? How are they going to find information, right? And you can't have unlimited Zoom calls with everyone. And even to do a Zoom call, you actually need to know whom you need to do a Zoom call with, right? So it's a big problem, right? And For new people, especially, it does create a significant productivity loss for a long period of time, right? They just take a little bit longer, right? So if you have, for example, a discoverability or your tech docs, right, or other things available very very easily and quickly, right, it reduces the pain, it makes somebody productive. And personally for me, making sure somebody who's new to the team, making them successful as soon as possible, like within 4 weeks, I think should be a target for every leaders to think about, and then use what they can improve in the developer experience to build. So this is about a new person who are sometimes often neglected, because people will feel they can learn and stuff like that. Now let's talk about experienced people also. Just let me talk about Harness, right? And as I said, I'll use a lot of examples from what we are practicing at Harness internally. We started with a monolith, because there was a specific problem that we were solving in the CD space, etc., etc. Today we have close to 100 microservices.
Nice.
Do existing people who are there 3 years ago know about all the services? The answer is no, they don't, right? So even for experienced people to know about what is happening in other part of the world has become a problem, right? Now it can be redundancy, it can be adoption of similar standards. For example, we are moving towards open API spec. How do we ensure that every team adopts open API in a similar fashion, right? So it becomes a big problem, the governance becomes a big problem, collaboration becomes a big problem, right? So I would say discoverability and collaboration are two important areas for leaders to think about what would work for that. And there are tools available, right? For
Yeah.
example, right now, internal developer portals are gaining very
Mm.
a lot of popularity. In fact, last night I saw stats from Backstage. It's an Spotify backed open source project for internal developer portal. They are speaking about 1,000 organizations with 4 million developers being very active today, right?
Wow.
That's a very very big stats, right? So you could imagine, right? Gartner said by 2025, 75% of the organizations will be using some form of internal developer portal.
Portals.
Discoverability and collaboration are the two driving factors to solve this problem, right? So again, I'm just giving some references, but I think evaluate your problem and try to find a solution, but make people productive. I think it's our responsibility as leaders.
True. I mean, I think the world after post COVID is different. And with hybrid and remote culture in place, it at times gets tiring for a developer, especially if it blocks their productivity. So, how can companies ensure that they are building products and services that meet the needs of developers? And what methods can they use to gather feedback and insights? Because knowing how the developer feels can also help to improve the processes that are already there or bring a new process. So maybe, yeah, you can share some thoughts on that.
No, I think that's a great question. I think everything is easier said than done, especially this, right? Because sometimes you are so much logged into the way that you operate that change becomes difficult. I mean, the change even becomes difficult to imagine, right? Forget about bringing that change, right? I think where we saw success at Harness, and there's something that we have seen a lot of good success. It took time, right? Like, it's not like you can get things done in let's say a 2 months period of time, right? Like, it's a journey, right? But you need to know what is your goal post, right? So where we started was, we said we will ask everyone what are the top three issues that they face that is taking away their productivity, right? So we created a very simple survey in a Google form, open question, right? Just write down whatever you feel, right? It doesn't matter, right? And then we did not do a Google form here. We actually did a Google Doc, right? So people can just type in the top three issues that they are facing. And it was interesting to see that people started, and we did not never planned for it, adding those small plus one for each of those comments, like each of those responses that somebody else has said, right? So some people, may not be very expressive, but some people like, yeah, I empathize, I know I am also facing this problem, right? So it gave us a very good starting point in terms of knowing what is the nature of the problem and how many people are impacted and affected by that problem, right? And because this was not like my understanding of what the team is feeling. No, 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 no. It is what the team is telling me, that hey, I need help in this area, right? So that's a difference, right? Like, so the change becomes very easy, right? It was not like top driven change, right? It was more like, okay, I need help, I need this area to be better, right? I think that's what that problem identification, I think I would say, was a very good start for us to look at this issue. I think the other area that helped us a lot is communication. So we created, couple of dedicated channels over Slack, like a help engineering channel, for example, and another very team specific help channel, right? So people can just post issues on the productivity that they are facing, and
Hmm.
somebody else can respond to, hey, I have solved it in this way. Plus we also have a dedicated developer experience team that was sort of looking into those issues, right? And we kept on communicating of every fix, every improvements, everything that we were doing, right? I think
Hmm.
that built a very, very strong culture in terms of bringing out that change, right? And of course, right, I think as you start adopting new tools, I think that also becomes very, very kind of important, right? For example, Harness recently acquired a company called Propello, right? And
Hmm.
they provide insights about, and they use data from Git, Jira, and some of those, right? They actually identify what are the blockers, right?
Hmm.
So while you are getting this qualitative feedback from the team, you also started to get this quantitative feedback from the team, right? And then you know how you can improve, right? So,
Yeah.
um, when you need to meet the needs of the developers, right? I think these are, I would say, great ways to collect these feedback and insights, right? And
Insight.
later on, I would also want to talk about, what very, very specific standards and matrix
Hmm.
that we have set up at Harness, right? So it no longer is only qualitative; it is very, very quantitative driven way of improving developer experience.
Nice.
Yeah.
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 Cool. So being transparent and asking developers what type of problems and challenges they are facing is really amazing. And like I really liked like creating channels on Slack for helping developers and giving out all the information there is also really cool. So
One thing I take,
um,
culture. I think that's what I
yeah,
get from uh, the
yeah, yeah,
payments there. If you have the right
yeah,
culture in place, then the job is easier. I think it's easy
yeah,
for every companies to follow this.
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
So yeah, so coming to the next thing, like community, it's a big thing. Like community plays a major role in developer experience, as we all know. So that's how famous tools like Kubernetes, Terraform, Helm have become what they are today. So Hemant, like how important is a strong developer community in creating a great developer experience, and what are some strategies for building and nurturing such a community? I think OP also comes under this community building activities. So I think if Hemant can give out some suggestions and then OP can add a sentence, that would be great.
I think that's a great question. And the way I look at community, right? Whether it's a community of 5 people, 50 people, 500 people, or 5,000 people, I think they're all connected in some ways with this empathy,
Hmm.
right? Like I am doing something, or I am facing a problem, or I am solving a problem which is very similar to what you have, right? So I think communities are very strongly connected with the empathy, right? And if you look
Hmm.
at 30 million software developers, right? And when CEOs are talking about 30% the productivity loss, right? I think there is a great sense of empathy that needs to exist in terms of making it a little non-personal, because
Hmm.
I think
Yeah.
developers are very sensitive, right? Like when I was coding, I was very sensitive if somebody says that, hey, you're 30% less efficient. And like,
Hmm.
no way, I am not going to accept that fact, right? It's not happening, right? But when you realize that there is a community, right? It is not, you're transcending the boundaries of your organization, your maybe a country, your culture, right? But you're seeing it more objectively, right? Hey, it's a common phenomena. It's not like I am responsible for it, right? It's the way things are happening, right? It's more objective, or maybe the tools that we are using, or there is a gap in the process, in the workflows, right? So I think this all, in my opinion, leads to a lot of innovation, and we are
Right.
seeing that innovation, right? Like I gave statistics of Backstage, which is an
Yeah.
internal developer portal. They're talking about, it is one of the largest and fastest growing community out there. They have 4 million active users as of last evening, I think I saw on their LinkedIn page, right? So people are coming together, right, and building something or trying to adopt something because they feel that can solve their problem, right? I think using and leveraging community is a great way, right? And I would encourage everyone to think about creating internal community, right? And I'll give you one example, right? Like when I said, right, like we started with collecting this feedback from people, what are the top three problems, right? When people did a lot of these plus ones, we were actually able to create a small community of people who can discuss that problem, who can empathize with that problem, and come up with a recommended and a suggested solution that somebody else can implement, right? So
Yeah.
you can look at a community at a micro level that can provide you a lot of leverage and benefit, or you can look at a community at a massive scale, right? But I think it is very very important to bring everybody together, right? I think create that
Hmm.
environment of empathy and not that blame gaming situation. I think
Correct.
community is a very very key and pivotal role there.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. OP is part of our community engineering team.
Come.
If there is any quick thing that you want to add, OP, on this site.
Yeah, I mean, I think you added the context. So it's always great to have a community around developer experience, because it's not only going to help one company developers, but it will help all the millions of developers around the globe. Like you said, identifying the problems, and internal teams will also work towards a solution or recommendations. Now we can share the best practices, let's say tips and tricks, with other developers that can help their efficiency and productivity, and bring in some innovation in the process. So I think, yeah, about strategies, I think we can do it in a separate show, because
Hmm.
that takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Community is a huge thing to talk about.
huge thing to talk about. Yeah,
Yeah.
There's a big topic in itself, right? But yeah,
yeah,
Yes.
but
Yes. True.
I think from today's show, I think for building better developer experience, I would strongly recommend leveraging and creating some sort of community within and outside as well.
yeah.
Hmm. Right. OP, you want to?
Yeah. So I'm sorry, I thought there's more coming in, but yeah, you know. Right now, generative AI is a disruptive technology and has got the attention of many leaders. And how do you think the emerging technologies like AI and machine learning impact the developer experience in the coming years? Because for me as an engineer, generative AI is a lot helpful in terms of maybe writing automation scripts. Now I don't have to go to Stack Overflow or any sources to understand a new technology. It's easy to just interact with the ChatGPT API and learn and do stuff. So the learning and implementation time is so easier. Maybe you can share some thoughts on how these technologies impact the developer experience.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think while AI and ML concepts have been around for some time, but the way the generative AI slash GPT is coming up, I think it is creating a large disruption. I think more than that, it is kind of letting a lot of people reimagine what is possible,
Hmm.
right? I think that reimagination of what is possible will lead to a lot of innovation in this area, and a lot of improvements is what I feel. And something like software delivery is a prime area to look at some of these improvements. And I think and the reason is very very simple, OP and Pawan. I think AI, and especially generative AI, is very very good at low stake repeated problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
Low stake repeated problems. And if you look at the toil that we spoke about, right? And if I go back to the data that we have collected from all the surveys, right? It's that problem, right? Like the repeated problem that you don't want to do, or you don't have time to automate, or you feel that it is very very difficult to automate, right? I think that is ripe, in my opinion, to see a lot of disruptions and a lot of innovations with generative AI, right? And when you think about AI, right, there are six things that AI can do, and I think we have to be very very clear about what are those six things that AI can do, right? Like, obviously, when you see all the examples where it works and where it does not work, right? So it definitely evoke a lot of curiosity and a lot of exuberance, right? And Gartner published a hype cycle for every
Hmm.
technology, right? This will also go through that, but I think fundamentally there are like six things that AI can do, right? The first one is it can reason well, right?
Yeah.
The second one that we expect, an intelligent technology to do is to plan. This is
Hmm.
where generative AI is very, very poor. You will, as you play around with it, you will find it cannot plan properly, right? But it can reason very, very strongly, right? It can solve problems, very strong at solving problems, right? Like if you look at GPT-4 models, right? Like people have given a lot of these complex, I have a ring in a cup, in a whatever, in a bin, and then I turn it over and this and that, right? Like generative AI gets it, right? Like GPT-4 model gets it, right? So it can solve problems. It can think abstractly. You have seen all the poems and everything being
Hmm.
written, right? A lot of abstract things. It can comprehend complex ideas, right? So you can do lot more complex, let's say, language processing. Like you can instruct because it can comprehend, right? Like you can say, hey, build this pipeline, do this after that, test my code, and God knows what all, or and I think the last thing, the sixth one, where I feel it is average, is learning quickly and learning from experience, right? And obviously, right, like GPT-3, like GPT-4 cannot learn, right? Like you cannot build all the billions of parameters. It has to come in GPT-5. That self-learning capability does not exist, right? So we need to
Yeah.
be very clear about what are the things that AI can do, and how we can
Hmm.
use it. As I said, low stake repeated problems, right? Now, on another axis, we are seeing things like auto GPT coming into the picture, or AGIs, general intelligence also coming into the picture. So I think this space is becoming very very interesting. I think a couple of areas where I am very very excited, where I feel software delivery will see changes, are how do you define your workflows,
Yeah.
right? Your pipelines or stuff like that. I think there will be some fundamental change in how you interact with the system, how do you understand the system from a workflow perspective in terms of what is happening. I think
Hmm.
governance is also something where you would see a lot of interesting things coming out, right? And today governance is a pain, right? It's not easy. Like you have OPA policies, and every system has some sort of a guardrails, right?
Right.
Which are not always very successful. They're enforced in a way, right? So you'll see a lot of improvements in the area of governance. And I think the third thing is, which is kind of very painful for a lot of engineers and waste their time, is the whole on calls and debugging an issue. I think that is
Mm.
the third big area where I feel things can be solved. The fourth I've already described, which is low stake repeated tasks. Your automation should become much simpler and easier, right? So these are like four areas where I feel there is a lot of disruption that we will see with the adoption of generative AI. Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
back to you, OP and Pawan.
Yeah,
No,
nice
thanks for
summary. Yeah.
it was a great insights. Yeah.
Correct. So yeah, I myself am interacting with ChatGPT, and it is helping me immensely in understanding, different software topics which are like complex. I can see that it is also helping me cut down my time and doing a Google search to search all those things, and it's helping me actually. But like Hemant again said, we need to be careful while using it to a certain
Using it.
extent. Yeah. So we talked a lot about developer experience, right? So how do you measure developer experience, Hemant? How do you
Yes,
measure
yes.
it?
Right. So let me give you a very simple trick, right? To measure developer experience, right? Like we spoke about qualitative, right? Like you can go and ask, put up a form or a Google Doc out there and make everybody write to it, right? So, for example, let's say somebody tells that, hey, the when they commit their code, right? The checks that runs takes a significant amount of time, right? Or they have to be in meetings for very long. Or somebody can say that to spin up a new environment it takes me a hell of a long of a time. Or somebody can say that finding a service or something like that takes me time, right? So you can see the problems when people describe it. My suggestion and the trick is very simple: force yourself to define a matrix for each of these problems, any problem, right? Like for example, if someone says, hey, my checks takes a longer amount of time. Let's say the checks with each commit takes, I don't know, 30 minutes, right? Because it's doing, I don't know, god knows whatever, right? Or 1 hour. You define whether 1 hour is, on a scale of 1 to 10, a good or bad, and what is your target, right? So quantify it, right? Whenever there is a problem, somebody says this is
Mm.
bad. Obviously, it will be bad in terms of what we are talking about: minutes and hours, right? We are
Mm.
saying people are only getting 4 hours to code in a day, right?
Mhm.
So simplify everything in terms of duration, how many times this happens in a day, and
Mm.
each time how many minutes are wasted, right? Or how many minutes are going away. And then you define whether it is good or bad, and then have a
Okay.
target. This is exactly what we did, right? In
Mm.
February, within Harness, this year, February, I pushed out a survey with 16 questions, defined a benchmark of what is good, what is bad, and said, okay, whatever you are seeing, just rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 meaning we are on the poor side, meaning we are taking,
Yes.
let's say, 8 hours to complete this task, or a good side where we are saying taking only 8 minutes to complete this task, right? Which is 10. So, what is your
Correct.
experience? So, we actually ran this survey, and 80% of our developers filled that survey. So now we have a
Mhm.
quantifiable data where we are. And then now I have a target, very clear target. Okay, this was taking 8 hours. What can we do to make it 6 hours? Let's say in the next quarter, then 4 hours in the subsequent quarters, right? And somewhere things will start to break and we can't push more, right? Then you'll think of a different way to solve that problem, right? But now you have, no. You don't have subjectivity into it. You have like very clearly identified number of hours to be saved, or number of repetitions to be reduced in your mind. Very clear, very categorical, right? I think
Wow.
this is the transformation and the transition that we have made at Harness. in last 2 years, right? Now everything is a simple matrix, right? So it's very easy to communicate, right? Sometimes, a big problem is you can make a lot of effort, but your stakeholders will not see the improvements, right? That's why I said, right, 20% improvement is what we have built, right? I can say with confidence. I mean, I can give you the number of minutes that is saved per day, right?
Yeah.
So that's why it's 20%, right? Out of 8 hours, 20% is an improvement, right? So you can confidently talk about some of these things. I think metrify it, like, for lack of better word, right? Convert everything into some matrix. It's okay
Metrics.
to do wrong. It's okay.
Hmm.
You can discuss with the team. You can ask your other managers, right? I think that helps a lot. I think that should be part of the journey, and then the improvement becomes very very easy. So this
I
is
think.
what, Pavan. To
Hmm.
answer your
Hmm.
question, I think this is what I see. In terms of how we can build matrix.
Bill.
I think on future of developer experience, I would strongly recommend using tools that helps you achieve your job faster, because if you have the right set of tools, right?
Hmm.
And and at Harness we use the Harness software delivery platform internally to achieve all of this. What I'm saying, right? And it helps us a lot, right? Not only it helps us to make our products better, right? Because Harness is in the software delivery space, right? But it also helps us to taste our product and use it as an end user, and kind of take the best advantage of it, right? Like, for example, I spoke about Propello, right? That gives you numbers where your things in Jira,
Hmm.
or your
Right.
PR, or your Git, right? Or some of the other things that are there, right? So use a tool that suits your objectives, and yeah, that's how you make your progress, right? And
Yes.
with everything that is happening around and the focus this area is getting, I think the future of developer experience is very very bright, and I'm excited about all the improvements that we will see both internally and around us, right? So yeah,
Yes.
uh, yeah,
So,
that's what. Yeah, go ahead, OP.
no, I mean, one thing I should say after hearing what you said is fail faster to learn faster. It's like, when we started, you talked about gathering problems and then creating service out of it. And I think doing it on a regular basis will definitely help the
Help.
internal teams. Yes. So, one final question, and I think this
Yeah,
is the last.
before your final question, but that's a very nice way to put it, OP, right? Like, I think
Hmm.
err on the side of action, and where we are today with all these matrix that we are collecting. I don't think I have absolutely any idea 2 years ago when we started this journey, right? But
Yeah.
because of fail fast approach, right, that OP is referring to, I think we reached this stage, right? So
Yeah.
action is very very valuable.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. And it is helping others to learn through this processes and the approach that leaders are taking. So thanks to you for that and for sharing this valuable insights. So I again, yeah, coming back to the final question, what one advice would you give to companies looking to improve their developer experience? And I think you already answered this partially, but yeah, I'll ask this again. What do you see as the future of developer experience?
Yes, yes, yes. I would like to see that, when another survey goes out, like the Stripe survey with all the CEOs, where they said they see 31.6% productivity loss. I would like to see that number be less than 10%. If all of us, work on some of the areas that are there impassionately, there is nothing wrong, right? Like, it's not
Yeah.
a personal issue, right? I think these are structural problems, and I think, as I was alluding to right at the beginning, right? I think the system and the processes that we follow itself has a strong this thing, right? And I think future, I would like to see tools like Harness being used more often. I'm because I would be definitely partial to Harness because I'm building it. I'm here, but there are several tools available. But make use of it, right? I think the more data, the more matrix that you have, right? I think that will help you sort of improve, right? So I'm very very positive and excited about this space, right? But Pavan and OP, feel free to add some more color to what you are seeing from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, developer experience. I read a lot of articles and write also. So I see a lot of articles on developer experience. This company did that. This company did that. I see a lot of metrics like you're saying, and I really liked asking, honestly asking your own developers what type of problems you are facing, and not just talking about developer experience, but quantifying it. Not just in a descriptive way, but also asking them rate in 1 to 10. What do you feel the challenges? That's really important, and I feel like today's session was really insightful. And thanks to Hemant for coming as a guest and making this show a successful one.
Yep. I
Yeah,
mean,
pleasure.
that
Yeah.
was really an informative session, Hemant, and I believe our viewers thoroughly enjoyed it. So thank you once
Yeah,
again.
Yeah, it was a great pleasure sharing, all the insights and, like they say, from the trenches sort of thing. And thanks, OP and Pavan, for hosting a show. I think what you have started with Code Rush, I see that, in next couple of years, it will become one of the top-notch shows with all these insights, and will help build a greater community, uh, and help people who are watching this. And thanks for everyone who's watching this show, watching it live or
yeah,
watching it later. Really, really
yeah,
appreciate your time, and thanks for having me, Pavan and Opi.
yeah. Hemant, if people have to like connect with you, what is the best way where you are available?
Yes, you can contact me over LinkedIn. I'm very active over LinkedIn, or you can post me on Twitter. I'm a little less active on Twitter, but I have a handle over there, Khandilwal H. Khandilwal with my last name, and H for my first name. That's my Twitter handle. But LinkedIn is probably a great way, and I'm always happy to answer any questions that you have over message. I'm very responsive over there.
Thanks, thanks,
Awesome.
thanks for joining, guys. See you soon in another session. Good
Yep.
day. Bye bye. Bye bye.
Have a good day,
Bye bye.
everyone.
Thank you,
Bye bye.
everyone.
Bye
Thanks,
bye.
Sophie. Thanks,
Thanks,
Pavan. Bye.
thanks, Hemant.
Thanks,
Bye bye.
everyone.